Doug Ladden, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks, John. It's good to be here.
It is a real pleasure to be sitting down with you. You're joining us from the New York area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about the skills, competencies, characteristics of successful leadership, but not just in terms of the individual leader, but in terms of like how you surround yourself with good people along the way, because we can't do it ourselves. I mean, there are certainly people who try to do it themselves, and there are people who kind of stomp on and kind of step over others along their path towards, rising up the ladder and moving up in leadership. But I think really good leaders, leaders who support their people, leaders who are admired by their people and collectively they're able to do really cool things. I think those types of leaders have to work alongside and collaborate with folks, and they don't get to where they get alone. It by definition has to be with other people and the help they receive from other people. And so really that's what we're going to be exploring together today, in part by your story and the experiences you've had throughout your career. As we get started, I wanted to share Doug's bio with everybody. Doug is co-founder and the CEO of Deliver Right Logistics, a technology logistics and final mile delivery provider to retailers of big and bulky goods such as furniture and exercise equipment. Deliver Right's patented Grasshopper technology platform offers a complete solution to delivery companies specializing in big and bulky products. Deliver Right's nationwide network also powers the U.S. logistics supply chain of major e-commerce and brick-and-mortar retailers from the manufacturer's dock to the customer's home. Deliver Right's simplifies complex logistics for hard-to-handle goods and provides best-in-class service to its customers. Before Deliver Right, Doug was a co-founder and senior partner of DLJ Investment Partners, a private equity manager of middle market mezzanine funds with 3.5 billion in AUM. As an active investor, he sat on multiple boards of directors for companies including TransCore, a leader in electronic toll collection systems, and owner of DAT digital load boards at truck stops. He currently serves on the investment committees of Quilvest Capital Strategies private debt funds. Doug has expertise in logistics, related technology applications, and private debt investing. And I could go on. There's so many really cool things about your background and experiences. But I'm going to pause there, Doug. Anything you would like to highlight, kind of high level, before we dive on in?
I think that what I would highlight first is just I'm embarrassed by that. I have to come up with a much shorter bio because that takes entirely too long and it could have been said much more eloquently. So let's just move on from I'm embarrassed that that was as long as it was. And then, okay, let's talk about things that people are going to be interested
I appreciate that. I appreciate the humility that conveys. I also I can relate. I've sat there in your seat, being introduced before, and you're just kind of like, oh, come on, get on with it. And it is a bit uncomfortable. So I appreciate your patience with that introduction. And but really, it points to a vast set of experiences and great capabilities that come along with that. So I'm excited to explore your story as we move forward. As I said in the introduction, none of us are really able to achieve success without help along the way, or certainly we're not able to achieve what I would deem ethical success. You can step over people, you can exploit people, and you can get ahead at least in the short term. Sure. But if you're really going to do success the right way, you can't do it alone, right? And so, is there a particular person who you're grateful for who helped you get to where you're at? Maybe a particular role model or a person in directly in your life.
Sure. And I agree with everything you just said. It's really if you're trying to build something, then you do need people. It's when you're in those situations where there's really there's no growth, there's no possibility of turning something into something more valuable. That's when I think people get very zero sum in their thinking,
Mm,
and they start thinking in terms of stepping over other people, and it's a horrible dynamic. I think one of the exciting things about business today is there's so many growth opportunities. And
yeah.
and so throughout my career, I would say I've been fortunate to have been attracted to businesses that were growth businesses. And when you're in an area where things can grow and the pie can get bigger, well, the only way to really succeed there is to have a good team and to make sure that everybody is growing and people, it's much easier to motivate people in a situation where you're focused on growth as opposed to, well, how are we going to cut costs this year? Right. It's
Hmm.
efficiency is a wonderful thing, but if all you're focused on is efficiency and cost cutting, that's a demoralizing and a depressing way to start every day. When I think about, role models, one of my partners when we started Deliverite was a guy named Bill Hauk. And Bill had a huge background in operations and logistics. And Bill always thought in terms of every problem was something that you could solve. He said, look, when we started Deliverite, we were trying to deliver hard to deliver items like, sofas and other furniture into people's
Hmm.
homes. And it's hard to get that set up. FedEx and UPS won't go into your home and set up a bunk bed for you, right?
Hmm.
Anytime we had a situation that we were trying to figure out, like how are we going to get deliveries made in Buffalo when we're based out of New York, out of New Jersey?
Hmm.
You would say, look, I can get deliveries made in Buffalo for you if that's important to you. Do you have the budget for it? He said, like I can make it happen, but let's talk about what it's going to cost. And I remember after one conversation, he said, look, if you need this sofa delivered to the moon, I can get it delivered to the moon for you, but it's going to probably cost a lot more than the customer's willing to pay you.
Yeah.
So I've always thought back on the lessons that I learned from Bill. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but he taught us all a tremendous amount, and he really had a mindset of, a problem is just an opportunity to find a solution. It may not be a solution that you like, but you can solve this problem.
I love that. I love that. Like a win-win outlook and a growth outlook instead of a fixed mindset and limited, fixed pie mindset where everyone is hyper competitive and in that kind of dynamic, of course, people are stepping over each other and trying to secure their piece, right? They're trying to
Sure.
win. And I get it. I totally understand why that dynamic exists. Um, Yet, if we want to find sustainable success, um, you either have to be able to develop and grow with people, or I mean, I suppose you can step over people and then just move to another company and just do that continually throughout your whole career
Right.
as long as it never catches up with you. But like eventually, like you have like business is relationships, right? And management and leadership is all about relationships and trust. And you will not get very far within an organization if you don't have those relationships and you don't have that trust. And so I have seen people do that. Like I've seen people
Sure.
just jump from place to place to place and they move every year or two. And I always wonder, like sometimes it's just because they're just so skilled and so in demand and they just move from place to place. It doesn't necessarily mean, that they're toxic or anything like that,
Right.
but it can mean that they're kind of chasing that, like they're trying to outpace, the
A
relationship
trail of
catching up with them.
victims.
Exactly, and so yeah, we have to find ways to work with people and then think proactively about how to solve solutions, because there's almost always a solution to any problem that we face. The question is it high enough priority? Like, are we willing to invest enough in it to accomplish the solutions that we're able to come up with, right?
Right.
And sometimes the
Right.
answer is no, like, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
if we just agree, like, no, we're not willing to pay that much to get the sofa to the moon, okay, then
Right.
at least we've agreed on that and we can move forward.
Yeah, and
But
let's let the customer know, that really
mhm,
that we're not going to be able to accomplish that for you. Or if you really want us to do that, it's going to cost X, which we don't think really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. Just be straightforward with them, right? I love
Yeah,
that. I think along with that, like I think this kind of came out in your example with your mentor, but are specific skills or characteristics that you have found in great leaders that maybe you've tried to pull into your own practice and being, that you've seen that drive success in the long term. Again, not short term. Anyone can find like short term success through carrot and stick and like stuff like that, but like
sure.
where
Yeah.
sustainable success.
I think one of the important lessons that I've learned along the way is actually listening and not waiting for the pause so that you get to talk. It's
Mm,
actually trying to hear what the other person is telling you. Because sometimes you're talking to somebody who can tell you exactly what their problem is and why they're struggling with finding a solution. And they really are just saying, I need this help. Many times, what they're really saying is, I'm trying to think this through and I haven't really thought it through all the way. And I'm getting stuck and I need some help just talking and, you know, I'd hate the word ideating, but I'm really struggling with how to put this into a comprehensible form. And
mhm.
and so sometimes you're just listening and saying, letting them talk it through a couple of times until they get to the right place. And I think knowing that every conversation doesn't resolve something is it's okay. Like you may not find a solution every time you start a conversation, and sometimes you have to let the person, wander and hopefully you can get it as focused as you can, but you really got to just let people get to the solution, and it's fine. Sometimes they really are saying, I need the answer. Tell me what the answer is. And if you have the answer, great. And if you don't, you also have to say, well, I need some more input in order to get to an answer. Um, I I think so. Learning how to listen to people and really listening for what it is they're asking is very important. I think also recognizing that as you advance in an organization, you're around people who have skill sets and expertise that you don't have. And
Yeah.
so you really do need to listen to what they're saying. And you should think of your role as being choosing among the options that are presented to you, as opposed to, oh, you're going to be able to come up with the best solution yourself in an area that, you're just not the expert. And so, when as we've grown our business and as we've hired people to run certain areas like customer experience or
Hmm.
transportation, these are people they forget more than I'll ever know about their areas, right?
Yeah, I love
And,
that.
and they know when we're having a conversation that they can't just come to me with a problem. They have to come to me with a problem and some suggestions. They may not like any of the suggestions that they've got, but they need to think to the next step of, like, what are ways to solve this? And then they're looking to the leader to say, help me make this difficult choice. And I think that's really what the leader is supposed to do, right? Is to say, you know, set the overall direction and then help people when there are tough choices to make and say, yeah, I agree with you. These choices aren't so great, but I think this is the least bad of our options. Or is there some way we
Mm.
can change the whole dynamic so that these aren't the only options, there are other options? But it's really talking to your team, like, and giving them the respect that they're the experts and you're just helping them to navigate their situation.
I really like that. Listen intently. Listen hard, with intent to others, and recognize that you're not the smartest person in the room. In fact, especially as you get into higher levels of leadership, you're further and further distance from your level of expertise, right? Whatever technical field you were in, um, your specific practical knowledge in that area is, you may be layers removed from it. You're managing teams of people who now have specialty, and it's silly. It's flat out silly for you to try to to manage all of that, like micromanage it and to solve all of those problems. And you said one thing, it was subtle, but I really liked how you framed it differently than how I hear people frame it a lot of times. Um, People often will say, "Don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions." I'm not a big fan of that phrase, um, because I feel like it often so I don't like it when a leader sets up a dynamic where they're the bottleneck and they create this codependency, and everyone on their team feels like they have to go to their leader to solve every problem, right? And the leader kind of is the savior to fix everything and to solve everything. That's not good.
I
Whether the
agree.
intent is good or not, that's not healthy. That's not effective, and you're not really leveraging and leaning on the expertise and the skills and the capabilities of your people. The flip side of that is often when you say, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. The problem with that is that it's completely the flip side of the coin, and you're saying, I don't want to be bothered by you with your struggles and your problems. Figure it out, and then come to me, right? And the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't want someone to come with me having not thought it through at all, having not struggled with it, having not used, your expertise, your experience, and, apply that to the problem, come up with possible solutions, but then come with those, right? And so that middle ground is how you framed it, and I think that is the right way. I think that's the healthy way, where people can still feel engaged in their work, they can feel like they're leveraging their expertise, they're not being micromanaged, but they're still being supported, while being empowered by their leader, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, thanks, John. I, I think with age comes wisdom, hopefully, and I would like to think that people that I worked with, 20 years ago would say, "Oh yeah, Doug was like that back then, also." But I don't think I really was. I think I was more of a bottleneck, and I think over time, as you get into more rooms with more smart people and into areas that where you're not the expert and you're trying to learn, you start to realize how, wow, you really do need to spend more time listening, and you really need to spend more time suggesting, making suggestions and asking more questions in order to get the best analysis, the best information out of your colleagues. And I also think uh, making sure that you're hiring the right people. It goes without saying that that's so important, but when you get it right, oh, you really get it right. I mean, it works so well. And when you don't get it right, you struggle with it, and it
Mhm.
won't get better. Like it's not the right person. And you can't make that person the right person. Like people can grow for sure, when you've hired incorrectly, it's really, you know it. And the question is, how long are you going to live with it yourself and make the rest of your team live with it because, you made a poor choice, or, I don't want to say you made a mistake. Like sometimes you're not quite sure what you need and you think I'm going to try this person and it doesn't work out. And, sometimes it doesn't work out. And these are real
Yeah.
people. So we're never cavalier about saying, "Oh, well, we'll just get rid of that person." Like, no, this is a person with like a life and a family. But you do have to be clear about what the needs are and what the goals are. And if you're not going in that direction, you have to start to let the person know that, hey, we need more of this and less of that, or we don't see it getting to a better place. We're going to have to start thinking about alternatives.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of a through line through many of the things you've been talking about, I think, is just like maintaining curiosity and intellectual humility as a leader. You know, and I do think like people who um, have true wisdom, like have that. They like sometimes I tell clients, or I'm a professor, so I'll tell my students, I'm like, some of the dumbest people I know are like the most brilliant people, like IQ wise, like in pure raw intelligence wise, they're brilliant, but they're stupid because they know they're brilliant and they think they know they have it all figured out. And so they stop relying on other people. They stop trying to taking in new information, and they become stagnant, right? And that is like the kiss of death. Like you really, you just have to maintain that intellectual humility and curiosity, continue to ask questions, I mean, assume you don't know. And it's cliche, but like the more questions I ask, the more I realize I don't know, right? The more I learn, the more I don't know, the more I realize I
Yeah.
don't know. And every question leads to more questions. And now, as a leader, you can't just endlessly ask questions, and you do have to do stuff and get stuff done, right? So there is a balance and a tension there, but you do, I mean, just having that level of humility, people can sense it, they can feel it, and it creates a dynamic, I think a learning kind of dynamic within your team where people feel a release, like a culture of experimentation, of creativity, of psychological safety. Just it's such a fun kind of an environment to be in when you have a leader like that, and they model that and they display that for their people. And hopefully, we've all seen leaders who are like that. And I'm sure we've all been with leaders who aren't like that. And it's a vastly different experience, when we're in those situations. So that intellectual humility and curiosity, just maintaining that as a leader, leaning on your people, working with your people. The irony is, a lot of times leaders feel like, well, I'll lose control. If I don't have control, then I'm not going to be able to get good outcomes. And I'm held to these KPIs, and I have to be able to achieve these metrics, because that's how I'm getting my bonuses, and that's how I'm going to get promoted and whatever. And I'm like, the irony is, hey, if you lean into your team and build trust and create an environment where they can perform, then it's like a rising tide lifts all ships. They're going to help you perform. They're going to help you have good metrics and good KPIs, and they will make you look amazing, because your team is going to be awesome, right? And then you will be able to get promoted. The other
Yeah.
way, you're ultimately, in the short term, you might be able to look good, but in the long term, man, there's going to be carnage in your wake.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not a, let's see, it might be sustainable for a period of time, but it's a miserable existence.
Yeah.
And so I completely agree with what you're saying.
And
Um, I,
generally miserable for everyone, even the
yeah,
leader.
yeah, yeah, I think
Well,
so. I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Well, Doug, thank you so much. This has just been a great conversation. I know at the time I need to let you go, but before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word for today.
Sure, thank you. I'm on LinkedIn, Doug Ladden at LinkedIn. .com. We're the journey for Deliverite has been, one interesting chapter. We also created a technology solution called Grasshopper, which is now a separate business. And just, you know, constantly being around people who are focused on logistics, constantly being around people who are focused on technology, and then separating the two. There are plenty of smart rooms out there, smart people in those rooms, and it is fun to learn. And if you feel like you're not learning things anymore, that's that's a sad way to go through your workday, and it's a very sad way to go through a career.
Yeah,
So I,
maybe time to make a move.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Thanks. It's been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Doug can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe. They can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.